Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Safiyyah, your host, and with me is Dr. Shabir. And Ramadan is just a few days away, Dr. Shabir. Hooray!
Yay!
So we are answering your Ramadan questions in advance of the series, and we are answering this perennial question that gets asked and leads to a lot of disagreements on group chats, Dr. Shabir, between uncles and aunties and the younger generation as well. This is the question: why do Muslims start Ramadan on different days?
Yeah, it comes up again and again, and communities get divided over this, even within the same family. Some people may say it's today, some say no, it's tomorrow, and then within a classroom, the instructors want to know when are we going to set the exams, and the employers want to know when do we give a day off for our Muslim employees, and so on. So Jewish, Muslim, and some Christian practices are tied to the lunar calendar. What does that mean? It means that our solar calendar, as we know, from January to December, consists of 365 days, except for a leap year, and you know the rhyme. Now, the lunar calendar depends on the rotation of the moon around the Earth, and that takes approximately 29 and a half days. So in ancient times, how did people know their months? Well, they looked at the phases of the moon. The moon goes through a dark phase. We don't see it. And then eventually we see a sliver of what we call a crescent, just as the light from the sun is able to shine on just a little portion of the moon. And that marks for people the beginning of a new month. Safiyyah, that was a simple way, right? And now, the moon goes into a full moon eventually by the mid-month, and then it goes into a dark phase again. So people would know that the month has come to an end. A new one will start when we see the new sliver. The practice of Ramadan is based on that lunar cycle. The Ramadan is the 9th month of the Muslim calendar, and the month after that is Shawwal. The first day of Shawwal will be the day of Eid, the festivity, the celebration that marks the end of Ramadan. It marks really the beginning of a new month, which means Ramadan has come to an end. Fasting period is over. For Muslims to know that the first day of Ramadan is here, we're going to start fasting. The average Muslim is not going to go looking out and finding, we don't even know in which direction to look for the new crescent. This seems to be some astronomical bit of information.
I guess we've lost touch with nature, right?
Yeah, most people in urban situations, don't bother with this. So we're going to wait for an announcement from the local mosque or the organization that we trust to give us this information. And sometimes the information doesn't come until late at night. Why? Because for us to see that new sliver of the moon, Safiyyah, now, as you know, the sun has to set. And if the sun sets in our area late in the evening, especially in the summer months, well, then, we're waiting for that information. Somebody to see the moon, report it to the relevant authorities, and then for the relevant authorities to call it. Now,
yes, and if the weather is a certain way, you might not even see the moon
exactly.
even if it's there, right?
And then sometimes it becomes difficult to know, like, how far should you expand the area of inquiry? So one opinion is that you should go with your locality. Another opinion is like anywhere in the world, because a hadith about this question says, "Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi." Fast when you see it, and stop fasting when you see it. So, meaning like a reference to the crescent. But then the you here is in the plural in this hadith. So based on this, it's in the plural because of the community.
Yes,
as a community. So based on this, some will extrapolate and say, well, the community is not just one locality of Muslims. This is the entire global community. And so it's anywhere that Muslims have seen the moon. If they reliably report to us that they've seen the moon, well, we know that the new month has begun, so we start fasting. Or, alternatively, if it's the end of the month, we know that the fasting period is finished. The next day is going to be our Eid celebration. But even if we say locally, that's another opinion as well.
Yes.
We say locally. The question is, how far is...
what does local mean?
Yeah, exactly. In our modern cosmopolitan situations, you have the main city, and then you have extensions of the city.
Yes.
In Toronto, if we have, for example, the Greater Toronto area, and then you have Greater Toronto and Hamilton.
Yes, which is bigger than possibly some countries in the world, right?
Well, that's possible. So where do you draw the line? So some will say your own time zone. Some will say, no, it can be extended to your continent. For a long time, many Muslims had thought that, okay, let's go by the North American continent, and that would apply to our Toronto area. Now, well, if you do that, well, then you wait until the sun sets in California, which is 3 hours probably later than Toronto, because their time zone is 3 hours later than Toronto time. So we're waiting for the sun to set, and that will be our midnight for their sun to set. And then by the time we get the news, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. By this time, people have gone to sleep, and then they wake up next morning, and they're not sure, are we going to work? Are we going to our Eid prayer, right? So this becomes a problem.
So it's all because of this one hadith that says, fast when you see it, don't fast when you don't see it. And the it is the moon, supposedly.
Yes.
And you is, a group of people. But what does it mean when you see it and when you don't see it? Right?
Exactly.
Does it mean that you're seeing it in your area? How big is your area? Or does it mean you're seeing it anywhere in the world? Because, now the Muslim ummah or community has grown far beyond Mecca or Medina, right?
Yeah. Now there are other hadiths as well. I mean, to be sure, but that's one of the main ones.
Yes,
another main hadith that is cited here is really in favor of those who say it should be your own locality. Saf.
Okay.
So they mention it's not so much a hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. It's a narrative that says that one of the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, had gone to Damascus, and there he started fasting with the Damascus. But when he came back to Medina in Saudi Arabia, that's where he found that the Muslims there had started the fast a day later, because they obviously saw the crescent later, and nobody's going to wait for a horse rider to come from Damascus to tell us that the moon had been seen, right? So they started fasting according to their own observations. So this companion is asking Ibn Abbas, the companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who is very well known for his commentaries on the Quran. We started there earlier. Like, aren't you going to, follow that? Because here I am telling you that information. So Ibn Abbas said, no, we're going to fast when we're going to stop fasting when we see the new crescent. And then he added, وَهَكَذَا أَمَرَنَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Thus, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, commanded us. Now, based on this, some will say, well, this means every locality will have its own sighting. Ibn Abbas in Medina was not concerned about what they're doing in Damascus, because he knew that the proper rule is that you go with the sighting of the crescent in your own area. Those who want to say, no, it's the global community, will come back at this and say, well, Ibn Abbas didn't give the exact words that the Prophet, peace be upon him, commanded. Like, we don't have words from the Prophet, peace be upon him, that says, fast according to the visibility of the crescent in your own community. It's Ibn Abbas's conclusion from something the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, and we can't be guaranteed that his conclusion is the correct one. So we have the two sides. Now,
so what do Muslims do in this circumstance? Should they, let's say, some members of the family want to go one way and some members want to go another way, which happens really frequently, actually.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Before I mention the solution to that stuff, let me put another wrench into this. You're
going to complicate it further? All right.
Yeah, okay. So the monkey wrench in this is that, whether for good or bad, I think for good, in the North American situation at least, but also more globally, especially where Muslims are minorities in Europe and elsewhere, many Muslims are familiar with astronomical data, and they know the preciseness with which the systems are working by the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the Quran even says, everything bihusban, according to measure. So the sun, the moon, everything is working like clockwork. We can predict in advance when the moon is going to be visible in a certain area. Based on certain criteria, it can be determined in advance that the start of Ramadan will be on a certain day, and we can do it in 10 years in advance. And the end of Ramadan will be on a certain day, again, 10 years in advance. This makes it easier for Muslims, especially where we live as minorities, to plan our work, our medical procedures, our examinations and so on, well in advance. So we can announce to the local governments, we're going to have our Eid on such a day, and then we can lobby the governments to give us a holiday that will allow Muslims to go and pray, conveniently on the day, just as people of other faiths have already been accommodated in this way with Christmas and other holidays. With all of the advantages in mind, Muslims go even further. As scholars say, well, if the Prophet, peace be upon him, had been alive today, rather than go looking for the crescent, which is what people did in ancient times because they couldn't do any better, he would have followed the knowledge that is available scientifically, like what's wrong with this knowledge. He was a practical person, we know. And it is mentioned that when he had the option between two things, he would pick the easier one and, the most practical and so on. So it seems, and that's why I said for good, that a lot of Muslims now think that it's fine to just use the astronomical data. And based on that, we can predict and call the dates in advance. We don't have to wait for the crescent to be seen.
Do you think, Dr. Shabir, that this is mostly something that's being done in the West, or do you think in other countries as well, like Saudi Arabia, they're also using this astronomical data to predict when the moon will be seen?
It looks like things are moving along in this way in other countries as well, but in stages.
Okay.
Like at one stage, people are armed with that information and they have a sense that it's going to be on a certain day, but they don't call it. They say, we're going to wait until we actually see the crescent. So they use that as a kind of a guide, but not as a final arbitrator. And then comes the next stage where people are using it, but they're not telling people that they're using it.
Okay.
Because for fear of, uprising among the masses and so on, because the masses tend to be literal because they've heard it from the Muslim scholars. They have imbibed it in a certain way. To them, it's in their minds, it's very clear. We're following this because that's what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him,
did. Yeah, and the hadith seems so clear, right? Fast when you see it. And
and we're just doing it the way the Prophet, peace be upon him, did it, and the way that Muslims did it for 1,400 years. We're not going to change that, right? So the average person on the ground may be thinking this way. And so, especially in some, Muslim majority nations, it is feared that if you introduce something new, people are going to, not take it easily. They're going to oppose that. So it seems that in some situations, what's happening is that the astronomical data is being followed, but the authorities are not upfront with letting people know that they're following the astronomical data. And then comes the final stage where everyone is up and they say, look, this is clear. We're following the astronomical data and there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, this is the sunnah. Now, how would we say this is the sunnah? You see, there's a hadith by Safiyyah in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Nahnu ummatun ummiyya." We are an unlettered ummah, an unlettered nation. La naktubu wa la nahsub. We neither write nor calculate. Is this a description of the people at the time, or is this a description of the ummah for all times? So I would say it's a description of the people at the time. And based on this, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, so the month is like this and this and this, or the month is like this and this and this. So this way...
I have no idea what you're doing with your hands.
Well, let me show you, right? So he motioned either 29 or 30.
Okay.
Right? So this simple way of putting it, is not the way that we would do it to a public audience today. We just tell them the numbers, right? 29 and 30. So the way the Prophet, peace be upon him, did this just emphasizes the point that he's dealing with an unlettered community. The people are not so familiar with math and calculations and, astronomy. They're like, how are they going to calculate in advance when the moon is going to appear? So the simple thing for them, and probably for, if we imagine some Muslims living in some part of the world that is still, an uncultivated place or underdeveloped area, they don't have access to modern technology. Hard to imagine because everybody, around the world has got one or two cell phones nowadays. But let's imagine a situation where somebody's on an island and they don't have communication with intelligentsia and they want to know when they're going to start Ramadan and end Ramadan. A simple thing for them: see the moon, they know the month has started. See the new moon, they know another month has started, and so on. Simple. So that still applies. But in most situations, the easiest thing is for people to know the calculations in advance and call the dates in advance. This helps us to be more organized, to plan and to develop and progress as societies. So we would say that this is the sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him. This is the basic thing. To know when the month begins, and seeing the crescent was only a guide to know that the new month is actually with us. But what actually determines the new month is that there is a new moon. And even the new moon is a way of calculating the month, but that is how the religious festivities have been regulated. And to know that the new moon is new, we see the new crescent, and that is a marker. But we can know the new crescent, or we can know that the new moon has, or the moon has been born, to use the common language about this, that we have an astronomical new moon. We can calculate that way in advance. And to keep with the tradition, or as close to the tradition as possible, we would calculate not only when the moon is new, but also when it would have been seen in a certain area, given certain criteria, like the how long has it been after sunset and things like this within that area, and then we can call it, and then we can declare holidays in advance and so on. So many advantages, and we can move away from this uncertainty that leaves Muslims in a lot of difficulty. Waking up in the morning, not knowing, are we going to the Eid prayer today, or are we going to work? And this becomes a real difficulty, and sometimes even an embarrassment, because there are Muslims in the workplace, some of them saying our Eid is going to be tomorrow, or a festivity, and some are saying, no, for us it's going to be the next day, and so on. So it's confusing for employers, for educators, setting exams and so on, and for governments wanting to give us a holiday, but they don't know which day it's going to be, and they're not going to give us the 2 days.
So, Dr. Shabir, okay, that's all well and good, but what about if, let's say, a person is following astronomical calculations, but then their family is not, or their mosque is not?
Yes.
Right? What do they do in that circumstance, practically speaking? Should they just continue fasting on the day when the family says, it's tomorrow's Eid? What should they do?
So you kept track of the question that I didn't answer, right? Okay.
Because it's an important question.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I put your question on hold, and then you've come back to it. So what should they do? Well, we have to live and let live. We have to make peace. If the whole family can get together and agree on one of the methods. So here we have 3 methods that I've outlined, right? One method is that you're going to see the moon in your own locality. Another method is you're going to see the moon anywhere in the world, or get reports from others who have seen the moon somewhere else in the world. And the third possibility is that you go with the calculations. Now, if everyone can agree with the calculations, to me, this is best. It unites the family, it unites the whole community. It can actually unite Muslims globally. Now, if you can't agree on the calculations, or, not necessarily in that order, but pick one. All right. So if you say, all right, we're going to go with the local sighting, then you're going to follow the mosque that goes with the local sighting. All of you together as within your family follow the same thing. You go, you pray in the same mosque, and then, everything is fine, right? You respect the other Muslims who are following a different opinion. You don't quarrel and argue about this. You know that all of these are acceptable. Each one has its arguments in favor of it and something against it as well. Somebody can say, okay, these are the positives and minuses, but in the end, I like this particular view despite all of the positives and negatives. But don't quarrel with the others, because they also have positives and negatives. So if you want to go with the local, go with the local. If you want to say, okay, all together as a family, we go with the global sighting, then fine, everybody's on the same page. What typically happens, though, is that people have their strong opinions and they don't want to go. So even if we're united within the same family, we're not united within the same mosque. So some, say we're going to go globally, some are going locally. And so we have this division. Again, don't quarrel over it. If a mosque can allow the space to be used both days, sometimes it becomes impractical and confusing for people. But if it can be done, those who are following one method that allows for them to have the Eid prayer on a particular day, they do it on that day. Those who are following the other method, having the Eid on the next day, they can do it on the next day, even in the same mosque. But as I said, it gets confusing because a lot of people are not so closely connected with the mosque, Safiyyah. And when they hear that the Eid is the Eid prayer is going to be in the mosque on 2 different days, to them, like the Eid prayer can be in 2 different days. So it gives a different message and sets a new precedent So then,
I think some Muslims will just go to another mosque, which aligns with their way of understanding the moon.
Exactly. So that's what typically happens. Yeah, they go to the mosque that aligns with their convictions.
Yes.
And so the methods remain distinct, and they're not confused. And the average person who is not so connected with the mosque, they know that the Eid is on one particular day, but they're confused in a different way. Like, why are these Muslims not agreeing on the same day, right? So there's a plus and minus on both ways. But more education needs to be done about this topic. Muslims need to understand that there are these variety of ways that have arisen due to our distance from the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. If we were with him, we would just do what he did, right?
Yes.
We'll follow him. But then we're
But
removed.
not just that, but like not just, in terms of time, but also in terms of space, right?
Yes.
We're in a completely different continent
environment
than he was.
and so on.
Yes.
And we see that the difference already arose when in Damascus they were doing it one day, and in Medina they were doing it another day. If it was all one place with the Prophet, peace be upon him, at the lead, then they would all do it the same day. But after time and with the separation of distance, new situations arise that were not specifically dealt with in detail, and now new thinking has to be applied to it, and the new thinking results in different conclusions. And so we respect these various conclusions so long as people are trying their best. We can see that they're honestly trying to deal with the sources. They're dealing with what the Quran says, and the Quran is not very precise about this particular matter. They're dealing with what the Hadith says, and we have a variety of narratives about it, which can be interpreted in various ways. People have different interpretations. Let's respect them all.
Great. Thank you for that, Dr. Shabir. I mean, you summed it up really well. All of the interpretations have validity to them. So whoever follows whatever way, we should respect each other in our opinion.
Exactly.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
Assalamu alaikum.
This is Muslim Media Hub. There's so much that happens in this building.
This is where we produce the television show called Let the Quran Speak.
And there are podcasts, shows, and documentaries in progress.
As you can see, this building is very essential for the good work that we're doing. This is why we purchased it for $2 million.
We've already paid off about a third of this building.
And we have another $84,000 to pay this year.
We're looking for 84 kind souls to give $1,000 each. Can you be one of those people?
I hope you will, or give whatever you can. Every dollar counts.
Thank you, and may Allah bless you and your loved ones this Ramadan and always.
Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak.
Assalamu alaikum.